What's going on, guys? Just to clear up any confusion, this is not a new Berserk chapter that just dropped out of nowhere. This is not a new deep dive analysis video series or anything like that. What this is a response to what you guys wanted. I asked in my 2022 Berserk recap video if you guys would like a compilation video of every chapter that came out this year and my reviews for it, and overwhelmingly, a lot of people did, so that's what this video is. This is a compilation of my reviews of Berserk chapter 365 through 371, all of the chapters that we got this year in 2022. This is the continuation of Berserk, where Studio Gaga and Koji Mori has taken over the helm and given us the chapters that we got this year. So this is the reviews for all of the chapters, just conveniently placed in one video for you to watch if you kind of want to go down memory lane and just remember all of the pain, heartache, and trauma that we got this year. And if that is something that you're looking forward to, well, feel free to relive the nightmare once again. So yeah, just enjoy this video, and I truly, humbly appreciate you guys and all of the support you have given me, not just in 2022, but over the years that I've been trying to do YouTube and trying to get a little bit higher on the threshold of reaching 100,000 subscribers, which I'm so close, and just genuinely just trying to do this for a living and doing my best that I can. Maybe it's not the best content out there. There's plenty of people that do it better than me. But for the ones that stick around and for some reason they're still here and they've been here for years, or if you just joined the channel this year but you feel like, hey, maybe this guy, you know, he's a little weird, a little awkward, but I kind of like him for some reason, I just really humbly thank you guys, and you know, it really means a lot to me. So this video is for you guys, just to give you back something that you want, and just to say thank you. And hopefully next year there will be many more Berserk chapters for us to go through and review. But getting 7 chapters in 1 year, pretty unprecedented. Pretty happy about it, despite the content therein being so damn upsetting. But beyond that, guys, enjoy this video. Thank you once again, and see you in 2023.
All right, before I get into this, can we just appreciate for 1 second Koji Mori and the entire staff of Studio Gaga for continuing Kentaro Miura's legacy and the greatest story ever told, in my humble opinion. These men put in a ton of hard work, and you know that with the release of these chapters right now, they are in a very nerve-wracking position, because how fans respond to these 2 chapters is going to be something very important moving forward. Now, I think because of the release of the announcement and everything, that we are in the best case scenario for a Berserk continuation. So if anybody does not want to read this continuation or does not like this continuation because it is not specifically Kentaro Miura at the pen, I understand that and I respect that. However, I also think that we should give a ton of credit and respect to the creators and for them continuing Kentaro Miura's legacy, doing what Miura himself would have wanted them to do, and it being in the best hands possible with his best friend for 30 years and an accomplished manga writer himself, Koji Mori, and the entire art staff. So I just want to throw a great shout out to these guys for doing an amazing job with the continuation and just having the sheer tenacity and balls to continue this. It has to be an extremely daunting task that I'm sure none of them take lightly. So with that out of the way, I was not expecting these chapters today. I was expecting these to drop sometime tomorrow, because Japan is, you know, hours and hours ahead of us, so I assumed that it would come out on Thursday here, that there would be a translation, but the hype is real, and we've had people online do a translation, and luckily, these 2 chapters in particular have a ton of action and movement in them, and there is very little dialogue, so not even a whole lot to translate, which probably also allowed it to come out much faster. Not a lot of crazy lore explanation or deep diving into anything. So fantastic job, guys. Thank you a lot for translating it. I'm sure you guys, if you looked hard enough on the internet, you'll be able to find it. But obviously this entire video is going to be completely filled with spoilers and my thoughts and theories about what is happening. So with that all out of the way, let's get going. Chapter 365 is extremely short, but very telling. Number one, it shows a lot of the other characters on Elfhelm, and I like this because, number one, it's showcasing the art style. I think that was one thing that was probably put into consideration when creating this chapter, because it's going to be known by fans that this is going to be the studio themselves doing the artwork. So the fact that we get to see Puck, we get to see Isma's mom, it's been a long time, and a bunch of other of the creatures on Elfhelm, it sort of helps us reestablish this world within this art style. So I like that from the get-go. I like seeing Puck right away because it takes me back to the very beginning of the manga, feels very nostalgic. We then cut back to just a few seconds before the last chapter left off. We see Casca sensing something and going outside, Shirake being curious, and as she opens the door, in all of his naked femboy glory, there is Griffith looking as beautiful and elegant as ever, with the panel cutting off conveniently right before it gets to his dong. How would that be for an introduction of a new Berserk chapter with new artist? We just see Griffith's dick. Anyway, Casca's brand begins to bleed, obviously, because she is near a God Hand member, and she starts to have more of the PTSD flashbacks of everything that happened to her, not just when she was of sound mind, but also events that happened to her while she was in her Elaine state, which I found interesting. Now, I assumed Casca would probably do this, and probably seeing the visions of Griffith would cause whatever missing memories are gone to flood back into her mind. We don't see any shots of the specific event that broke her mind, but we do see a shot of the Eclipse Hand. But other than that, there is no dialogue from Casca either out loud or within her mind, so we're not exactly sure how much she remembers here, but it does definitely seem like this is such an excruciating amount of pain that she's not even able to comprehend what's happening in front of her. Now, I do really like this page with Shirake noticing the eyes of Griffith. If you guys ever noticed, ever since Griffith came back as a God Hand when he was incarnated, his pupils have always been drawn sort of reptilian. I always like that effect to it. Also, I think this is really important to remember that Shirake was the only one who kind of knew what Griffith was this entire time. In fact, it wasn't until in canon in Berserk, only maybe a dozen chapters ago, that Guts actually sat down and told the people at Elfhelm the story of Griffith. It was mostly told off screen, but that was the first time that most of our main characters even knew who Griffith was. Shirake was the only one for the longest time that knew he was this creature of darkness that got his power from the abyss, that he was whatever these God Hand creatures are. She learned all this from Flora, but this is the first time that she's seen him face to face, that she's been firsthand with him, seeing him here. And I love that it focuses on her reaction and her terror, because if there is any character besides maybe Gedfring or some of the other, Elfhelm alumni, if there is any one of the main cast besides Guts and Casca that understand the gravity of this situation, it would be Shirake. So I like that they showed that. And then that chapter ends pretty much with what you would expect. Guts flies into a rage and starts to go to attack Griffith, which is exactly what we all thought would happen. If this was the only chapter released today, this would have been quite the case of blue balls. It still would have been great to get a Berserk chapter, don't get me wrong, but thank God we did get one more. And it's in this chapter, 366, where the really interesting stuff starts to happen. There is more going on here than you would think. First of all, yes, Guts does go to attack Griffith with the Dragon Slayer, but there's a couple of really weird things to take note of. Number one, the Berserker armor is not taking a hold of Guts. He is successfully holding it back and not allowing it to take hold. This is showing extreme restraint from Guts, and perhaps maybe even a bit of fear of him not wanting the Berserker armor to take hold, in just the very fact as he saw what happened to Skull Knight just a few chapters ago within his backstory, and how the rage took hold so hard that, he eventually died while wearing the armor because he just fought until the bitter end. So it could be, even though there's no dialogue to suggest it, it could be that Guts is a little bit more fearful now of the Berserker armor than he was before, even though he's been told that there are ways to master it moving forward, but obviously not enough time to figure that out now. Griffith is right in front of him. The other very strange thing that is happening here is it's looking like Guts is connecting with the sword and slicing right through Griffith, and yet Griffith receives no damage whatsoever. There are several pages of Guts swinging, looking like the mark is going right through his body, right through his head, and swinging over and over again, and yet he's not making contact. And Griffith isn't retaliating. He doesn't even really seem to be dodging. So this is really concerning because, number one, now there have been instances where Griffith has avoided contact with weapons, seeing as though he's outside the reason of the mortal world and all of that, but Guts' Dragon Slayer has also been shown that it can harm on an astral and physical level. So if there is any weapon that should be able to hit him, it should be Guts's, right? Well, look, I don't want to go into my deep Ryan theories about everything that's going to happen in Berserk, but all I have been saying, and I've said this in multiple videos, you can quote me if you guys want to, but I believe that Guts' Dragon Slayer sword is going to be the next Baelot sword, the next type of sword that Skull Knight has. And with the capability of both those swords combined, then maybe there's an alternate outcome of what's happening here. But that's a story for another time. If it happens, I just want you guys to quote me. So when it does, you guys can all say, Ryan said this. And I'll be like, yes, I did. Now, the other thing that's going on is Shirake entering the astral realm here, as she usually does to help restrain Guts and to help him kind of keep his clear conscience, keep his ego while he's using the Berserker armor. But while she's doing this, she sees the image of Griffith, or I guess what would be Griffith's astral form, which is sort of similar to how she's been in this situation before, and the Moonlight Boy has been able to sort of use its astral form to also calm Guts down and all of that. So it could be very similar, since they share the same body, that there is this sort of similarity within them being in the astral world together and being able to interact with Guts' astral form, Shirake's astral form, and all that. Farnese shows up, though, which I can't remember where Farnese was, in relation to where everyone was standing, but she shows up already in her astral form, and she doesn't really explain how. Now, the translation says, it's not important right now, I'll tell you later, that sort of thing, but it is very strange that she would already be within this form. Maybe she already thought that Shirake would be at Guts' side here, so she wanted to come help out as well in that form. I'm not really sure, but the translation of Griffith in this astral dimension calls it like a maelstrom, a force that draws in and swallows everything around it, which is really unique when you remember when Griffith gained his power as a god hand. Well, it was from the omitted chapter, I suppose, but he basically swallowed up all of this negative emotion and turmoil and darkness and broken dreams and all of the Band of the Hawk, basically kind of flowing into him and everything like that. You could sort of look at it like he is this maelstrom or this whirlpool that sucks up everything into it, just making himself more powerful. You can even see that with the way that people look up to him and believe in him and idolize him and worship him. It's like he's absorbing everybody's feelings and emotions to just make himself more powerful. Symbolically anyways. I don't mean that literally in the story, though that would be interesting. And then we get the moment, you guys. The moment. Puck flying around in the air. He senses something. He sees something on the moonbeams that can travel across the planet. He's like, what is that? Feels the energy. Comes down. Then we see the paw. Then we get our money shot. The final double-page spread of Chapter 366. Everybody just say it with me. Motherfucking Zod! Zod is here! Oh, yes. Yes, motherfucking Zod is here. Now, does he look a little bit funky? Yeah, maybe. But you know what? I think it'll only get better with time. Also, this means many, many things, you guys. Okay, first of all, this might confirm that Zod was, in fact, watching over the Moonlight Boy the many times it was kind of theorized, where we kind of saw that weird image in the distance that could have been Zod. It also allows me to believe that Zod might only be the first of many to arrive on the island. He may have sensed Griffith's energy, came here right away, and the other Apostle Boys could be on the way right behind him. And also, very important to note that since everyone on Elfhelm seemed to be able to sense Griffith's energy while he was there and sense the darkness, do not forget that Skull Knight is still on this island, and I am certain that he also sensed that. And I am certain, just like I've always said, that Skull Knight is going to show up here. We might get a Guts and Skull Knight versus Zod moment. We might get a Guts, Skull Knight versus Zod and Griffith moment. We might get the death of one of these characters. We might see the end of Zod. We might see the end of Skull Knight by the time the Elfhelm chapters wrap up. I would not be surprised either way. What I am comfortable saying is that our time of peace is over. Many people were complaining about some of the more recent Berserk chapters, and when I say recent, I mean within the last 3 or 4 years, that there wasn't action going on, it was too tame, the characters were just hanging out on the island, it was a bunch of lowly witches, everyone seem to want more, right? And granted, when you're used to only getting about 3 chapters a year, obviously you're going to be wanting a little bit more in those chapters, but I think it was very important to see the peace and be able to see the positive and the good times that these characters had. That for just a little while, they could let their guard down, rest, be happy with one another, and find some semblance of tranquility on Elfhelm here. Because we knew it wouldn't last. It was just a matter of when. And I don't believe for a second that Elfhelm is going to remain. I have said from the get-go that Elfhelm will burst into flames. I still believe that. I think the rest of Griffith's people are on the way. I think Sonya's even going to show up and then have a little back and forth with Shirake. Now, we don't know where the other boys are either. Serpico has not showed up yet. Roderick has not showed up yet. Please, just give me some more Roderick, bro. I need my boy Roderick back. But the fact of the matter is there are actually so many characters centered in one location. This is going to be quite the task to actually create this scene that is building up with all of these characters all in one location. I can't imagine that there won't be character deaths. I can't imagine that Elfhelm is going to remain. And I think that we're going to get a major death as well. Possibly within Zod, Skull Knight, or one of the main cast in Guts' group. I'm not sure. Now, if you're asking me what I think will happen next, same thing I've said was going to happen. I still have the same theories. I still believe that Griffith is going to take Casca with him because he doesn't want to have this weakness of his every time turning into the Moonlight Boy, going back to Casca. You know, it's a pain in the ass. He's going to bring her back to Falconia. Whether or not our main characters follow him or try to follow him, yet to be seen. Like I said, I also think the Dragon Slayer will become the next Baelot sword, but I guess that would require Skull Knight to remain alive in order to forge it, perhaps. And we might see a separation of the group, too. My main question is still, what is the ramifications of the time skip? Remember, before they entered Elfhelm, Isma's mom said, hey, be careful about how long you stay in there because time moves differently, you know, in magical realms than it does in the outside physical world. But what exactly is that time scale? How long have our characters been here? That is something I'm really curious to figure out. And inevitably somebody will ask, when are the next chapters coming out? And my answer is, I don't know yet. Maybe it wasn't in the translation that I read. Maybe we'll get an update pretty soon. I'm sure that we will. Trust me, when there is a release date, I'll let you guys know. You guys will let me know. It's a good back and forth. Other than that, guys, please tell me what you thought of chapters 365 and 366. There's a lot to discuss. Even though the chapters read quick, there's a ton to discuss in the story, and there's also a ton to discuss when it comes to the creation of these chapters and how you feel about the art, how you feel about the direction that the story is going. There's a lot there, and I'm sure that there will be a lot of conflicting opinions about it too. But anyways, guys, please leave all your thoughts, comments, theories down below in the comments. I really appreciate it. Thank you all for the support of this channel and on these videos. Please give the channel a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, because it does really help me out more than you think. Subscribe if you want to stick around and see more videos. If this is your first time here, I have like hundreds of Berserk videos you guys can check out if you want to. And if you want to support the channel on that deeper level and keep the channel going, I do have a link for my Patreon down below. Even as low as $1 a month is extremely helpful and keeps me afloat. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll talk to you next time. You know, as the great Jeff Goldblum once said,
boy, do I hate being right all the time.
It seems as though a couple of my predictions for the future of Berserk are coming true, but now that I actually see them happening in front of my eyes, I don't know how I feel about them, because this story could go in such a crazy, chaotic direction, but hey, that's Berserk for you. Anyways, chapter 367 is out now, you guys. It has come online with an English translation, but as I assumed from the last chapter, this is still a very action-heavy chapter, so there wasn't a whole lot to translate, so we got it pretty early. We do definitely begin the chapter with a little bit of Zod versus Guts, which is cool to see, and we do get to see Zod in a couple of different angles to showcase Studio Gaga's ability to draw him, and I think that they did a pretty good job overall. Actually, you know what's funny about it is that I look at this Zod, and I kind of go back to Zod's original first appearance, and it looks very kind of similar to that, so I wonder if they were literally going back to the beginning and trying to mimic Miura's artwork from there. But then we get a very interesting scene, and I think one that plays a large role into everything that's happening now in the Berserk story, and might confirm, I say might, it might confirm one of my theories from before. So we cut to a different place in the island and we see Danan hanging out with Isidro, Serpico, and Isma. Good to see Serpico again. I feel like it's been a while. So they're kind of hanging out and retiring for the night, and I feel like this is a little bit strange because you would think that Danan, of course, would have already sensed Griffith on the island, but this also could be Griffith only transformed probably in universe like a minute and a half ago. So this could just take place about a minute before the transformation happened, and when Danan starts feeling the ominous presence and falls to her knees, that could be like the exact moment that Griffith or the boy transformed into Griffith. But here's what's interesting about it. The name of the chapter is Miss Fades as Cherry Blossoms Fall. And I have had this theory for some time that I think the reason they showed us that flashback between Guts and Chich wasn't just to have a cute little side mission chapter, a little bit of a history of Guts. I mean, that all was cool and fine, but I think it was there for a specific reason. I think it was a precursor to the Elf Island and Danan, and how Chich was attached to that flower, and when the flower died, so did Chich. And now on a much greater scale here in Elfhelm, we have Danan, who seems to be, when she transforms into her full sort of elf form, very reminiscent of the cherry blossoms. There's a giant cherry blossom tree on Elfhelm that seems to pull everything together. And from what we know about the spirit trees, I would say that the cherry tree here on Elfhelm is a spirit tree and an extremely powerful one, perhaps one of the last ones on Earth that is blocking the deeper levels of the astral world from fully merging. Because when Danan goes down, she says, and this is the translation that's online right now, but she says, "We are in great danger. They shall spring forth from the earth one after another." Now, who could she be talking about? Who is not on Earth yet that could be very soon if the final spirit tree goes down? That's right, the motherfucking God Hand. Now, this may or may not happen, but remember the purpose of the spirit tree is to kind of like absorb that astral energy to keep the world separate. The physical and astral worlds are meant to be separate. The afterlife is meant to be, well, afterlife, duh. To merge these together is not something that is supposed to happen, so I would imagine the final spirit tree is the most powerful and might be the gateway to bring the God Hand here on Earth. Perhaps inadvertently, Griffith found the final place he was looking for. And with that too, I believe if the cherry tree goes down, Danan's life will be lost alongside it. There's a lot of images of the cherry leaves flowing throughout this entire chapter, and it seems as soon as Griffith transformed back into his, well, Griffith naked body self, the power of that naked ass was strong enough to begin the destruction of that spirit tree. Guts tries to attack Griffith once again as he sees him going for Casca, and we have this great moment with Guts swinging the Dragon Slayer down, and you can just feel the power from his strike and Griffith blocking that strike. But then again, I feel like this is a little bit left up to the viewer. You could say that Griffith stopped this strike, or you could say that Guts stopped instantly because he realized if he cut through Griffith, he would also cut Casca. I'm more inclined to believe that it was Griffith stopping it, but this panel showing Griffith grabbing Casca and then Guts' eyes just kind of shocked at what he's seeing might suggest that it was Guts that stopped. Also, Guts seeing this image is incredibly traumatic for him. The last thing that he would ever want is to have Griffith put his hands on Casca again. And here, once again, he sees this and is helpless to do anything about it. Now, I know some people are going to say, it looks like Casca is grabbing onto Griffith too. Casca is knocked out right now, man. She passed out. We saw that in the last chapter. Casca is not clinging onto Griffith for any reason. She's passed out. Griffith is holding her up. It was Shirkei and Farnice holding her up. Now it's Griffith. No, Casca did not enjoy it. Get out of here with that bullshit. After that, Elfhelm starts to crash and break around them. Guts starts falling down in the debris. Shirkei and Farnice fall. And it's similar to what I was saying before. I was saying Elfhelm was going to go up in flames because I assumed they would burn the tree to get rid of it. But an earthquake is just as good, I suppose. And the final image shows Griffith standing with Casca in his arms. Zod over there looking at him like, "Nani?" And it's another one of those beautiful looking images, but when you realize the darkness behind it, it makes it so hard to look at. You just show this image on its own, seeing this man with the long, elegant hair holding the girl in his arms, you would think, ah, yes, that's the hero of the story, rescuing the princess. But us Berserk fans know better. Now, I think a lot of people are going to ask, why is Griffith doing this? Why did he go over to Casca? And I've explained this a few times before, but it bears repeating since it's actually happening right now. Ever since Griffith was brought back into the physical world, his body fused with the demon child, the child of Guts and Casca that was corrupted by Griffith when he did his thing at the eclipse, and it was born as this nasty little astral creature. But then it was swallowed by the egg of the perfect world that was bringing Griffith into the physical world, and Griffith fused with that boy when he was born. And our first indication of this basically being Griffith's biggest weakness is at the Hill of Swords. While they were here, Griffith came here specifically to see if being around Guts would sway him away from his dream once more, or if his transformation into a god hand had fully frozen his heart. He sees Guts, and he admits that he feels nothing, that he is free. However, when Casca arrives at the scene, Griffith instinctively goes over to save her from the falling debris. Now, why did he do that? Griffith does not care, but the Moonlight Boy does, and the boy's instinctual need to protect and be around its mother kind of took over Griffith within that moment. And notice, as soon as this moment happened, that's when Griffith decided to leave the Hill of Swords. Griffith instantly recognized this weakness within himself and removed himself from the situation. But that was before he realized that under the full moon, the Moonlight Boy gains full control of the body and several times has come to visit Casca. Now, if you were Griffith and you had this entire kingdom to run, and Casca was halfway across the world, would you bear that risk every single time the full moon happened that you were traveling across the world somewhere to be with her? Wouldn't it make more sense to keep her close by, to keep her in Falconia, in order to ensure that when this transformation inevitably happens, you are in a safe, secure environment and you don't have to worry about that? It's a way for him to gain control over this weakness within himself. I believe he is physically incapable of harming Casca, and I believe that he is instinctually compelled to save her if she is in danger. He created his ultimate weakness by enacting on his primal human vengeance, and now he is stuck with it. He has to live with it. So he's taking Casca to Falconia. Beyond that, this would be chapter 3 out of 6 of the final Elf Island chapters in the Fantasia arc. So we have 3 more before it transitions into either a full new arc or a new segment of the Fantasia arc. And what could possibly happen after this? Well, Elfhelm is breaking apart. Danan mentions that they will be coming, perhaps the God Hand, and I'm sure Griffith is going to hop on his Zod Uber and fly out of there. But do not forget, we also have very powerful people on this island that are just noticing this commotion now. Skull Knight still has yet to show up. I believe he will within these next 3 chapters. We have Gedfring, we don't know the extent of his abilities, and of course all of the witches in training here on the island. All in all, I think this was a pretty badass chapter. I really enjoyed it. Inevitably, you will have a crowd of people that will instantly dislike it because it is not drawn and written by Kentaro Miura himself. Of which I would just say, just stop reading Berserk. You don't need to read it. It's not a necessity. You know, I won't go into it again, but I do think we are in the best case scenario for a Berserk continuation with Mori at the helm and Studio Gaga drawing it. So this is the best that we could possibly get, and I'm enjoying it so far. And honestly, this is exactly, well, almost exactly how I saw the story going anyways. So I feel like this is exactly what Miura had planned to do regardless. I think everything makes sense within the character motivations and what's happening here, so it works for me and I am enjoying it. So you guys let me know what you think down below. Did you enjoy this chapter? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Did you understand why Griffith is grabbing Casca and trying to take her away? Did you feel the same way about the spirit tree as I do? And do you think we're going to get some God Hand action within the next 3 chapters? I'd like some slan action myself, but that's another story. Anyways, guys, if you enjoyed this video, please leave it a like. Please leave some comments. Tell me what you thought about it. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more. Trying to reach 100K by the end of the year, so I'd appreciate it if you help me get there. If not, that's totally cool too. I still love you guys. I appreciate you for watching. I'll see you next time. All right, everybody, so the translation for Berserk Chapter 368 is out, so let's not waste any time. Let's get right into it. The chapter picks up exactly where we left off, with Guts falling down into this chasm where the entire ground had broken apart beneath his feet, and now he is surrounded by this mass blob of restless, angry souls, angry spirits of the dead, kind of similar to what we've seen before and confirmed when it switches over to Isidro, Serpico, Danan, and Isma, who, through a bit of dialogue, mentioned that this is the same thing that they saw at Albion when the Tower of Conviction fell. Now, the interesting thing about that is during the Tower of Conviction segment and in Albion, the reason that that entire mass of darkness and evil energy sort of rose up to begin with is because that is a place where many people died in horrible, traumatic, and unjust ways. There was a whole torture system that was happening there. There was diseases, there was plague, there was people dying of starvation. There was a whole bunch of horrible shit happening, which basically caused their spirits to be angry and restless and unable to pass on after death. And so that's why all of that dark energy was there, which all kind of pulled together and culminated, being drawn to the brands, which eventually allowed itself to be part of the incarnation ceremony, which brought Griffith back to the physical world. Now, the interesting thing about that here is that here on Elfhelm, this doesn't really seem to be the case. This doesn't seem like a place where many people would have died in a regretful, angry, restless kind of way. This seemed to be a place of peace more than anything else, or at least a little bit of tranquility, or more on the positive side of the astral world. Not that we didn't see a little bit of darkness kind of foreshadowed here, but at least not to the extent that we're seeing it taking over the entire island. But of course, we do get Skull Daddy making an appearance here with a very long neck horse. But it is from Isidro's perspective, and he is very short, and I'm very short myself, and I'm also a ginger, but I definitely don't have a mermaid babe by my side, so you know what? Isidro's beating me in life right now. But a lot of people were wondering when Skull Knight was going to show up, and I kept saying to people, if you look at the last 3 or 4 Berserk chapters, in Berserk time, everything that's happened has happened in the span of about a minute and a half, maybe 2 minutes worth of time. So give Skull Knight a minute, man. He'll catch up. He'll get there. And of course, he is here. He would not miss this moment for the world. And he is here battling this sort of mass dark blob, just as he did before in the Conviction arc. He tells everybody to escape, as they would not be able to defend themselves against the sheer amount of darkness that is swallowing everything up. But he also mentions this weird line where the translation says that the beam of blinding light pierced this land, which I'm assuming is Griffith showing up here, which wedged open fissures which act as passages all over. So what I'm assuming that means is that all of these dark, restless souls are not actually from Elfhelm, are basically kind of like the sword of actuation can, crack open a fissure, into the astral world or through dimensions. Perhaps just Griffith's mere presence in a world like this, in a land like this that is so magically dense, it just created this sort of crack in the astral area where it's located. I don't really know how it works, but that's how I'm kind of envisioning it in my mind. But then there's also this, and again, remember, these aren't 100% official translations. I'm not knocking the translators whatsoever. I think they do an amazing job, but I just want to make sure that we're getting the lore correct here, because Skull Knight does say that this land is sustained thanks to them, talking about the restless souls, and you could say that they are the true lords of the island. I'm not really sure if he is saying the darkness they represent is sort of the counterbalance to what Elfhelm is, so you kind of need to have both, or if they are what truly belong here, because remember when they were first explaining the lore of the 3 worlds and how the astral world works, Shirake was saying something along the lines of the restless souls kind of stay within this area for a little bit before passing on. These ones can't seem to pass on. So Elfhelm kind of exists within that layer of the astral world. Is Skull Knight basically saying these spirits are going to be here regardless? Maybe that's what the spirit tree was keeping away. Maybe that's what Elfhelm was kind of protecting itself from. But these are the actual real entities, or the ones that are meant to be here more than the witches and the magical entities here. I'm not really sure what he means by this bit of dialogue, but hopefully that'll be explained a little bit more in future chapters. And then not only do we get Skull Knight featured in this chapter, but we also get my boy Roderick. Roderick is back for the first time since I don't even remember when. It's been so long. Roderick is here, my man. If I was gay, it'd be this man right here. But instead, I just want that mermaid coochie. Anyways, There is a bit of humor here, but Roderick is basically heeding the warning of the mermaid, saying that we got to get out of here. He's noticing that something's wrong, and he's readying the ship for departure, trying to get a mission to the mainland, to his main crew. And then that swarm of massive dark energy, dark souls just starts swarming the entire land. And thank God for Roderick having an entire crew of people for a body count within Berserk, because so many of them get a chance to die with many of the threats from the sea god to this now. We always got to have some expendable characters just to show some brutality and some gruesome deaths, and thank God we get a man that is basically sucked dry, skinned alive from these monstrosities, and it's awesome, man. Reminds me of classic Berserk. Looks like Conviction Arc Berserk, well, obviously with what is actually happening here, but it just looks great. And of course, the first thing Roderick is thinking about is Farnese, man. That man loves Farnese with all of his heart. He's a true soldier of romance and dignity and honor and respect and bravery, and, he's just the man. But then, of course, we get perhaps the most tragic moment of the entire chapter, where we cut back to Guts, and as he looks up, as he's being surrounded, and it looks like he's actually going to get swallowed by these creatures. I wouldn't be surprised if he actually needs to activate the Berserker armor to get out of here, or if Skull Knight's going to come give him a hand. But as he looks up, he sees the Zod Uber service taking Griffith out of there with, of course, Casca in his arms. And I had already theorized many chapters ago that Griffith was going to take Casca back to Elfhelm. Not to repeat myself 1,000 times, but essentially the whole reason for that is if Casca is his greatest weakness, if it's what he's going to go to every time the Moonlight Boy takes over, if it's the thing that he can't physically harm, it would make sense to keep his weakness close by so that it cannot be exploited against him later. And also, if he is incapable of harming Casca, well, he probably wouldn't want her in any danger also. He is sort of compelled to protect her based upon being fused with the Moonlight Boy. To Guts, all he sees is the man who betrayed him. All he sees is Casca's abuser and rapist. All he sees is everything that he's been fighting against since the eclipse, since 20 years in our time, and probably several in the Berserk time. Looking up and seeing everything he worked for, bringing Casca here, getting her healed, getting her to someplace safe. That was the entire point of all of this. Looking up now and seeing her taken away from him, flying high into the sky like something angelic as he descends into the ground, into this dark, hellish-like world. As much good as Guts tries to do, he is constantly dragged down. And as dark and vile as Griffith is, he is constantly rising higher. And the final pages of the chapter show the spirit tree going down. It looks like burning up, falling into the ground. So again, something that I had predicted to have happen. And I do really like that it is Puck looking on. It kind of brings everything full circle. I like that they've been focusing on Puck's reactions a little bit in the newer chapters, just simply because, he was such an important character to begin the story with. So I kind of like just seeing things through Puck's perspective. And I feel like they might be doing some justice to Puck moving forward. I don't know. I just get a vibe that that's something they might be doing. But other than that, guys, I also believe that there are 2 chapters left of the Elf Island chapters. Now, some people are saying that it's going to go into a completely new arc. I think it's still going to be Fantasia. It's just going to be like the second part of Fantasia, just like how Conviction was Lost Children and then it was Binding Chains. It's still in the same major overall arc. It's just a different segment of it. But we still have a lot here that we need to tackle because we got whatever is happening to Guts right now. We have the darkness spreading all over the entire island. Where's Farnese and Shirke? They were not featured in this chapter, so where the hell are they? We also haven't seen some of the other characters like Gedfring and the witches and everybody else. So there's a lot of stuff here that is still not being shown. Understandably so, because there's just so much happening and there's so many characters. But we got 2 chapters to wrap up Elfhelm, and we need to start seeing some more people. So hopefully that will be the next chapter, picking up the pieces, and then we're going to head into whatever is next in Berserk, and I personally just can't wait for it. So I enjoyed this chapter quite a bit. It was a bit quick, but I really love seeing Roderick, Skull Knight, some of the characters we haven't seen before, and just that tragedy with Guts, it really hit hard, guys. So let me know what you think about this chapter in the comments below. Tell me all your thoughts, theories, opinions. Let me know how you think it's gonna go in the future. But other than that, guys, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll talk to you guys next time.
So all the astral beings on Elfhelm just got Thanos snapped out of existence, and I'm just sitting here thinking, where was Morta this entire chapter? And I really hope that those milkers are still corporeal. Anyways, guys, thanks for being patient with me. I know this review came out a little bit later than they normally do, but I had some previous engagements I had to go attend. I got to go see the Clerks 3 premiere, and I hung out with Kevin Smith for a little bit. It was pretty dope. But besides that, I got to come home to a brand new Berserk chapter, chapter 369. You guys know how much I love to 69. However, this was not a fun 69. This was a chaotic, awkward, misshapen, wrong position, sort of just destruction of everything that is good and holy in the universe. Now, we knew when Berserk came back that it was announced that the Elf Island chapters of Fantasia were going to be 6 more chapters, and if you're keeping track, this is chapter 5 out of 6, and it really makes sense when you think about how this chapter ends and what the potential for the final chapter in the Elf Island segment is going to be. But this was basically just to rub salt in the wound, man. We had our little battle, we had the first encounter with Griffith, we had Casca getting taken away, then we had the destruction of Elfhelm, which is still happening in this chapter, and this chapter just fucking rubs your goddamn face in it, so much so that you just feel like Guts here, broken, defeated, just falling to his knees. And this is the saddest thing about this chapter, in my opinion, because Guts is always the guy, you know? He's always the guy that's able to persevere forward. He's always the guy that's able to stand up in the worst conditions possible, always the guy to keep struggling, always the guy to keep going. And you think about all the things that have happened in his life, from his childhood to Gambino to the Band of the Hawk to everything to right now, and it just is one of those moments where everything catches up to him and he just feels so useless. Even the translation saying that he can't even land one blow, but it's more than that. It's not just like the physical, I'm trying to fight Griffith and I couldn't land a blow. It's that, like, I've gone on this entire long ass journey of trying to do the best that I possibly could to survive, and I knew that one day we would be face to face again, and then maybe by that day something would have changed. You know, there was always that idea in the back of his head that someday this is going to happen and it's going to work out, and then face to face with the reality of the situation, he just couldn't do it. He couldn't do it. He just could not do it. And now we have one of these rare moments of Guts just, I think everything just hit him as hard as possible. This is probably the worst blow he's had since the eclipse itself. You know, not watching Casca be violated, but watching Casca being taken away and him just feeling absolutely helpless in the situation. Now, I was assuming that Guts kind of sinking down within the island as it was being destroyed, that we were going to be dealing with a lot of that, but he actually doesn't get, like, trapped underneath the earth or anything. In the end of the chapter, he does wind up just kind of there on the island, sort of seeing the path of the beams ahead of him, and perhaps, you know, Zod flying away in the distance. So he did not get trapped, so we didn't have that segment go the way that I was thinking it was going to. And we do get one brief panel of the Skull Knight kind of seeing everything, and I love the translation of it's like, what a calamity, because that's just like classic Skull Knight speech, man. I love it. Just like the most like verbatim, just exact pinpoint of what's going on, you know, no emotion, just like, what a calamity. I love it, man. I love this guy. And thank motherfucking God that the motherfucking Chad himself, Roderick, is still alive. My boy is here. Look at Roderick still doing work, man. Coming up on the ship, that hand rising over the corner, and then his crew helping him out. And then what does he do as soon as he gets on the ship? Does he say, oh man, I almost died? Or does he say, man, I'm so scared and terrified? No, he immediately goes into action, calling the shots, being the captain, telling them what to do. And he starts ordering them to throw barrels and everything else into the water so that people have something to grab onto, so they're not swallowed by the sinking of the island or the dark spirits that are attacking. He's still focused on saving people, still focused on doing the right thing. This guy is a badass. Everyone, if you don't appreciate Roderick, just unsubscribe from my channel. Honestly, like, I am only here for Roderick support. If you're a Roderick hater, I just don't even want you here, bro. Actually, well, subscribe until I hit 100,000 subscribers, and then afterwards you can go. I just want to, yeah, I would want to hit it first. But then we get the other characters that have made it to the highest ground that they can find as the island sinks into the abyss of the ocean, and we have all the astral creatures, and we see Serpico and Isidro here looking down on, you know, the survivors that are making it to the island, that are trying to get out of the ocean and everything. And then we have a very interesting event that happens. Now, I read this, and at first I was kind of confused, but I think that I might have pieced together a little bit of what is actually happening. So I'm just going to go with my theory, and you guys can tell me if you agree or disagree. But essentially what happens is, as the island sinks away, Danan says that the astral creatures are starting to merge back into the astral world. So essentially they start to disappear. Again, this is sort of like some Infinity War shit where they're kind of evaporating into dust and they're kind of leaving the island. And only the astral creatures, so the creatures that are actually mythological. So we have Danan herself, who is the elf queen, or the flower storm monarch of the island. And we also have Isma, who is a marrow. The other marrows nearby are also disappearing. Which is very sad for Isidro. I actually do feel bad for my guy. Like, I don't hate him as much as most people think I do. I play it up for the humor, but, I got a soft spot for Isidro. And I liked him having his little girlfriend and finding Isma. I enjoyed that little dynamic, and now she's disappearing in his arms. It's like, I don't know, man. I'm feeling some type of way about that. But some more of the creatures start disappearing, and we see some of the fawns and other type of characters that are disappearing as well. Some of the elves. And they're all kind of evaporating back into the astral world, which seemed very strange to me at first, because the first thing I was thinking is that it was this whole gigantic event that the astral world and the physical world had merged together and become one. I mean, this is what the Ganishka tree is for, right? But then I started thinking about it a little bit further, and I think that it ties into a theory that I had, because my theory was that the spirit tree, the giant cherry tree that is on the island, was very significant to the existence of specifically Danan. I wasn't thinking the entire island, but I was thinking specifically Danan. And when Griffith was going around and destroying all the spirit trees, he destroyed Flora's. That was the little, connection to the astral world. It was like siphoning a bit of the astral world off, this little area in the world that kind of merged the two. And that's sort of what Elfhelm was, just on a larger scale, so it had a larger tree. And when the tree was destroyed and it sunk into the ocean that had happened in this chapter, well, once the tree was destroyed, the astral creatures started to dissipate. And I think that this leads back to the original chapters of Guts and Chich, which, by the way, so if you're thinking about that chapter, this might actually be good news, because Chich might not actually be dead. She might just have transferred over into another layer of the astral world. So good news out there, everybody. Chich is probably still alive. Wouldn't it be cool if we got to see her before the end of the series? That would be amazing. But I was still very confused about it, because if the astral and physical worlds have merged, then why would they disappear when the spirit tree goes? But then I started thinking about it a little bit further, and maybe that's the entire intent of getting rid of the spirit trees. Maybe the merger of the astral world, because we know that the astral world has different layers, and we know that it kind of goes on deeper and deeper and deeper as you go. I have suspected for a long time that the God Hand, the rest of the God Hand other than Griffith, are still not yet within the physical world because of how deep down into the astral they are. I imagine that they're kind of propelling themselves forward, propelling themselves to the physical, but probably not actually here yet. That probably requires an extra ritual, which might take place in Falconia. But if that's the case, it means that there are layers of the astral world that are not here. Some of it is, but maybe not all of it. And maybe the sum of it that is sort of the dark fears of mankind that has, the trolls and the ogres and the monsters and the horrible shit, but the stuff that mankind has forgotten over time and that they've been disassociated from, and they've been specifically designed over these last thousands of years to not be in tune with, to not be in touch with, to not remember, the positive astral creatures, the positive magic, the good creatures that are out there. That has all sort of dissipated from, the thoughts, minds, and consciousness of mankind over these past 1,000 years. So with the spirit trees gone, connecting them to the physical world, then they would disappear because they wouldn't be part of mankind's consciousness. Does that make sense? I don't know if you guys get where I'm going with this, but I think that that's an explanation as to why they disappear, but they're still, monsters, trolls, ogres, and all those creatures instead. So essentially the spirit trees were what was still connecting the positive magical forces to the world, if that makes sense. But it also adds in an extra question, because it wasn't just the creatures that were connected to the island that disappeared when this happened. It was also Isma and the Marrows, which were not from here. So does that mean every astral creature on this island has just disappeared? And if that is the case, does that mean Puck is gone? Does that mean Avalora is gone? Does that mean that Skull Knight is gone? That is the most interesting one. I don't think so, because for some reason I feel like Skull Knight still exists, like in an interstice like Guts does. I think Skull Knight will still exist, but that's an interesting question. But also, Skull Knight's got the dimension cutting sword, so if we want to go even further with, God, I'm such a fucking nerd. If we want to go even further with this, Skull Knight could probably just like cut his way back into the physical, but that's, my God. Anyways, the point of this chapter was the hopelessness, right? So the island is destroyed, Guts feels defeated, and all of the astral creatures that could be helpful, that would have this positive magic to them, have all gone as well. There still might be some characters here that can help, because we do see some of the witches in training still. We see some of the other humans that were on the island, and if they're in tune with that. So I don't think like Shurike disappeared or anything. She's human, so there's no reason she would. But Puck and Avalora might be gone. They might be gone. And again, these characters aren't dead. They just exist within a different plane of they're basically like dimension hopped. So they are unable to interact within the physical world. So they're not dead. These characters didn't die. They're just not here anymore. But yeah, man, this chapter, it definitely kind of rubbed salt in the wound, and it was pretty heart-wrenching. And we got one more chapter of the Elf Islands. I'm assuming this will be the characters regrouping on the island, everyone coming over to Guts. Maybe Guts sort of, maybe Guts is going to go in a different direction a little bit and just be like, what's the point? And someone's going to have to motivate Guts, for once, rather than the other way around. It'd be cool if it was Farnese, because Guts pushed her so hard to begin with, and like the moment where he's like, pick up the torch, you have to defend yourself, you can't just pray, you have to get up and do something. It'd be cool if the roles were reversed and Farnese was able to say something like that to Guts. But other than that, man, really love this chapter. Looking forward to next month, October 14th. So hopefully I'll get that review out to you guys as quick as I can when that comes out. Unforeseen circumstances this month, but yeah, thank you guys for waiting, for being patient for the review. Let me know what you guys think of the chapter down below. Yeah, all your thoughts, theories, comments, opinions. Let me know what you think down below. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts, and let me know what you think of my theories and what do you think is going to happen moving forward. And other than that, guys, I just want to generally say that I love you guys, and thank you so much for the support. I really, really do appreciate each and every one of you, and I love you guys so much, man. Thank you. Ah, yes, just as the cover page shows us, everything in the last few chapters was nothing but a bad dream, and really, everything is bright, shiny, sunshines, rainbows, lollipops, tea parties. Everything is perfect, everything is great, everyone's hanging out. Look at Isidro back there, super cute, super awesome. Everyone's having a party and enjoying life. And then you wake up. Shout out to my boy Rama for that intro. Link is in the description for his YouTube channel. Go check him out. And this is really a picking up the pieces kind of chapter. This is after all the shit has gone down, the first battle between Guts and Griffith in a long time, Griffith capturing Casca, leaving the Elf Island, Zod leaving as well, and the entire island collapsing and sinking into the ocean. And the only thing that's really left is just a few pieces of land, and of course my boy Roderick's ship that they pulled Guts onto, and everybody is kind of regrouping inside of the ship, trying to find one another. Serpico, of course, immediately trying to look for Farnese. I know some people were saying that he wasn't concerned about Farnese in the previous chapters, which makes no sense whatsoever. They were completely separated and the island was collapsing around him. He really had no way to get to her whatsoever. So it makes sense that now that everyone seems to be looking for refuge inside the ship, that he would immediately go towards her. And what I do like about this chapter a lot is it gives little kind of subtle hints to every character's motivation and everything that they've been through. And even though it's not a very long chapter and it doesn't dwell very long on each character, every character kind of has their own little moment to encapsulate how they feel about what just happened. As in Serpico looking for Farnese, being concerned about her, being worried about her, as he always is. And of course, when it gets to Farnese and Shurike, there's a couple of interesting things that happen here. Number one is Avalora, who is still here for some reason, but we'll get to that in a second. Valera mentions, where the Moonlight Child went, not knowing what Shurikei knows is that the Moonlight Child transformed into Griffith, which brought the darkness and chaos leading to Elfhelm being destroyed, and Shurikei really just doesn't have the heart to explain it or try to talk about it at this point. She knows she's not keeping the information a secret for any particular reason other than this is just a really difficult thing to talk about. Everyone's regrouping. Maybe now is not the time. Maybe let's just give people a breather, and then she'll relay the information. But we also have a scene with Farnese, which I think was really, really important, where she starts breaking down, saying it's her fault, she was useless, she couldn't do anything. And if you guys remember, when Farnese first joined this party, Guts' party, her biggest point of contention was that she felt like she wasn't contributing to anything. She felt like she was useless. And if you remember Farnese's entire childhood and how she was just sort of left to her own devices, and she was doing everything she could to try to please other people, to try to get, her parents to notice her, to try to just be important, to mean something. It's important to her that she stands up on her own and can do something. And even though she's done so many amazing things at this point by learning more in witchcraft and being like the sword and shield of the ship and creating the barriers and learning everything that she's learned to come as far as she have, even showing up all the people that were training on Elfhelm, she was better than all of them because she had real world experience. But just in this instance, she failed. Everybody failed. And so it brings her right back to that initial trauma of not feeling good enough or not feeling like she is useful to the group. And I really, really like that because even as much as you progress as a person, when you hit a low point, you tend to revert back to the things that harmed you the most or that bring you the most pain. And for her, it's that feeling of being useless. So I really, really like that they did that with her. But also, to counteract that, what did they do? My girl is back. The big titty goth GF of our dreams, Morta, makes her first appearance since the return of Berserk. Out of all 6 chapters of the return with Koji Mori at the helm, Morta was nowhere to be found. For all we know, for all intents and purposes, they might have just rid her character off or not wanted to deal with her at all. Or maybe she just got killed in the sinking of Elfhelm. Who knows? But you know what? No, they bring her back, and she knows that they got shit to do, man. She's actually being a lot more responsible here than I would have given her credit for, so maybe that's my bad. But she's being extremely proactive and actually able to keep a level head better than most of our main characters, and that's probably because she is very detached to everything that was happening, and she sort of has been doing her own thing this entire time. So I think that gives her a little bit more of a level head, and she notices that all these people are injured, from everything that happened, and she doesn't really have enough magical ability just herself to help heal everybody. But you got Farnese and you got Shurikei there. You don't have any astral creatures left, so they're the ones responsible to do it. So I like that she comes over to Farnese and is like, hey, stop crying, stop groveling, we got work to do. And I love that Farnese is like right on that shit. As soon as she realizes that, she gets up and continues to perform, realizing, and even if she doesn't realize it herself, that she is extremely useful to the group, but also that they have a duty, they have a mission. They can't just sit around and bask in the sorrow right now. They have things to do, they have stuff that they have to get done, and all they needed was just that little bit of push. So we gotta thank my dark hair goth princess for bringing Farnese back to her feet and getting her to realize what she needs to do. Also, she does mention to Shurikei as well that Guts is on the ship. He made it on the ship, so they know that he's here and that he's safe. However, she says that she's worried about the Berserker armor that he has on, and that if it were to activate, she knows the consequences. Now, if you guys remember back in chapter 362 where Guts went down to visit Hanar, this is where he had the flashbacks of the Berserker armor and saw the death of the Skull Knight when he was human. Morta was down there with them. Morta went down with Shurikei to kind of spy on what was happening there. So she witnessed that firsthand as well, seeing kind of the abilities of the Berserker armor and what it could do. She didn't see into the past like Guts did, but she's aware of the fact that prolonged use of this or intense use of this could lead to the user's death if they don't master it in some way. And a lot of people were also asking, why didn't Guts use the Berserker armor when he fought Griffith? And I was saying that one of the major reasons why I believe he didn't was because his next time using it might be his last. We've already saw that his senses have completely almost depleted, like he's got blurred vision. He could barely hold on to a sword when he was training with it, slipped right out of his hands. That's not like Guts. A guy like Guts that's been a swordsman for as long as he has and as strong as he has, his sword his sword is not just going to slip out of his hands at this point, and it's because he's losing his senses, he's losing his capacity to battle on the level that he had before. So if he had used the Berserker armor against Griffith right then and there, well, that might have been the end of Guts. I also do believe that part of it was Guts wanting just to remain as conscious as he possibly could while fighting Griffith because of how personal their vendetta is against each other. But I think a large part of it was because it was right after he saw the history of the Skull Knight, and there was probably that extra added tension and fear of what could happen if he used it. Then we also see Roderick coming onto the ship as well, doing everything that... And we also see Roderick coming on the ship, being the absolute leader that he is, the ship captain, getting things in order, figuring out where the people are, alerting people of the shortage of cargo, and just overall just being the absolute Chad leader that he always has been, man. No Roderick disrespect is allowed on my YouTube channel. If you guys don't like Roderick, you just gotta get out of here, man. I can't abide people that don't appreciate the bravery, the competency, the heroics, the compassion, and that he is the one that wants to go check on Guts. Shirkei, I believe, is also making her way over to him, but Roderick goes to the room that Guts is in, and the door's closed, the door's locked behind him, and inside the room, we get one of the most interesting Guts scenes that I think we've ever had in the manga, where we see Guts standing away from his sword, away from the Dragon Slayer, and looking at it like it is some sort of foreign object, like it is something that he doesn't understand, like it's something that has betrayed him in some way. And I think there's a really interesting symbolism alongside this, but he falls down and starts sitting against the wall, and the same time that he falls down, the sword falls over too, just giving this giant thud, just this big sound of defeat. At the same time Guts falls down, so does the sword, and they're kind of like staring at each other from across the room. And Guts recounts of all the moments where he's been either alone in life or with people in life, and no matter where he was, the one thing that he could always rely on was his sword. And that basically has always been a metaphor for something that brings him comfort, something that brings him solace, the one thing that he knows he has control over, or not necessarily control over, but the one thing that's going to allow him to live to see the next day, the one thing that makes him feel safe and secure. Some people have a security blanket, Guts has a sword, and that's how it's always been since childhood. And he recounts on all these different moments from the Golden Age arc, which is cool to see, and he starts thinking about the sword, and the sword being the only thing that he had. And I think there's multiple purposes of this scene, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong or if you think something else about it, but I think number one, it's that the Dragon Slayer seemed to be useless against Griffith, and it was the one thing that he could always rely on, the one thing that allowed him to get out of most dangerous situations, the one thing that he could use to help propel himself into a new way of life. And here in this moment, in that fight, the sword was useless. It went right through Griffith. It could not harm him. There was seemingly a strand of hair that it was able to cut off from Griffith's body, but it wasn't able to slice Griffith or pierce Griffith. So in this instance, the sword was useless. So the only thing he had didn't matter. And I think that also goes along with the last chapter of him saying, I couldn't land a single blow. It wasn't necessarily about his fighting prowess. It was about how he has this one thing that he relies on, and that one thing is useless. Now, I also think that this relates to his relationship with Casca, because if you remember at the end of the Wounds chapters, one of the first time Guts was able to sleep without a sword was when he slept with Casca by his side, meaning that she brought him the same level of comfort as the sword did. That love that he had for her and that she had for him was similar. It was the light in his darkness. It was the thing that was able to slice its way through the brutality of life. And this entire time, this entire journey, everything he's been doing has been for Casca, and to get Casca to Elfhelm, and to get Casca healed, and maybe have the chance of them being together again, or maybe just having her being able to be her. And so I think when he looks at this sword and says that you were all I had, or at least that's what the translation is, I think that it's both a metaphor for the sword and for Casca. Because Casca was all he had. It was his prime motivation, and now she's gone. Not dead gone, but again removed from his life. And it feels almost like everything that he did was useless. that it didn't matter. That all the struggle, all the journey, all the fights, traveling across the ocean, all the demons that he battled to get Casca healed, well, now Casca's gone in the hands of her rapist. And just makes him feel like he has nothing. And there were various metaphors before about Casca being the light in his darkness, or the thing keeping his darkness away. And I think the same thing can be said about the sword. And as Casca leaves him, something that he does not have, that light anymore, the sword also unable to serve him, that's another piece of the light gone, which just proves that more and more darkness are completely encompassing Guts, which leads him closer to activating that Berserker armor for the final time and truly giving in to the Beast of Darkness, because he would have nothing left. So I think this is a really, really dark sign of where Guts could go. But let's talk about some other things real quick. Now, in the last chapter, we had all of the astral creatures disappear from Elfhelm because the spirit tree was destroyed, and it was the thing that was tying them to the physical world. Now, in this chapter, we also see Puck and Avalora are still here. So that leaves the question as why are they the only astral creatures that remain? Puck is a inhabitant of this island, though he left many, many years ago. He still, you would think he would be connected to it in some way. Avalora, I could give her a pass because she didn't come from anywhere near the island, so, but at the same time, the spirit tree at Flores was destroyed, so I would imagine if she was tied to any spirit tree, it would be that one. So it is very curious as to why they're still here. I can only offer headcanon theories that maybe they've drawn enough connection with the group knows them so well, they're very intimate with one another, so maybe they're still able to perceive and see them just simply because of the attachment that they have, whereas the people from Elfhelm, they haven't really known them that long. I don't really know. That's the only thing I can think of right now, and my only gripe about this chapter is that it was not addressed, that nobody talked about the astral creatures disappearing, nobody talked about why Puck and Avalora are still here. It wasn't mentioned at all by anyone. And I get that it's a chapter where everyone's rushing into the ship, everyone's regrouping, and I understand that it's kind of hard to sit everyone down and have a talk, but that's what we need to have happen. So whatever the next chapter is, or whenever the next time it cuts back to this group, we really need to have a chapter where the characters sit down and discuss what just happened and where they're going moving forward. We do need an exposition chapter. Normally, I think exposition should just come naturally as the story goes, but with everything that just happened and with all the possibilities of what could happen, I really think that we do need an exposition chapter. However, I don't think that we're necessarily going to get that next, because I think that the story is going to cut away to something else. And I could say that either it's going to cut away to Rickert and Salat, or more than likely, it's going to cut to Griffith returning to Falconia with Casca. And I think that we're going to get a few chapters of Casca in Falconia and her having kind of free reign to see everything that Griffith has been up to and has created, and just see the modern world as it is now. I really, really do think that we're going to get some Casca-focused chapters. But the good news is that we're going to get a chapter sooner than I thought. Now, we are skimping a month. There's not going to be a chapter in November, but we are going to get one December 9th. So that's 2 months away. And I was worried about this, because when they said that there were 6 chapters they were going to do to end the Elf Island chapters, I really thought that after we got those 6, we were going to go back into a hiatus. I really thought that after we got those 6, maybe that would be all the chapters we would get this year. But we are going to get another chapter this year in 2022, which is crazy. That would mean 7 chapters in 1 year. I don't know when the last time Berserk gave us 7 chapters in 1 year. So I think we should be really appreciative about the things that we got. And depending on how people are feeling about Berserk right now with Koji Mori at the helm, I think these last 6 chapters have been pretty great overall. I have very, very minor gripes. I'm not going to gripe about the artwork, although I do think this chapter was really, really good art-wise. Because, like I said, you can't recapture Kentaro Miura, so all we can do is our best to imitate it. But I think every character is acting in a way that makes sense to their character. I just think we are at a point now where the characters need to sit down and have some exposition about what's going to happen and where they're going to go moving forward. But anyways, guys, if you have read Chapter 370, just came out, let me know what you think about it in the comments below. Leave your thoughts, theories, ideas, opinions, Where do you think it's going to go? And if the story continues and, goes to a different character or goes to a different location, do you think it's going to go to Falconia and follow Casca? Do you think it's going to go to Rickert and Salat? Or do you think we're going to stay on the boat? And where's Skull Knight? That's a good question. I think we need some story time with Skull Knight to really give us some information about what happened 1,000 years ago in full, but who knows if we'll get that. Anyways, I love you guys. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up and a comment down below because all interaction will help it be seen in the algorithm better. And if you want to, go ahead and subscribe to the channel because I am trying to get to 100,000 subscribers by the end of the year. And you get various manga, anime, movie, live streams. You get a whole bunch of stuff on this channel. So go ahead and subscribe. You might find something you like. Other than that, guys, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll talk to you next time. You know, of all the possible Berserk characters that we could see again in this manga, I've always wondered, where is Jill? Where is my boy Jerome, the pseudo-apostle man slayer? Yeah, that guy's a badass. But of all the characters that exist within Berserk, the one I never thought we would ever see on screen again, well, here's the rape horse. Okay, so Berserk Chapter 371. I think just overall, I want to say that I thought the artwork in this chapter was very, very, very well done. I feel like every single chapter that Studio Gaga makes, they get better and better with the art. As far as the context of this chapter, I assumed that Berserk was going to go in either one of two directions, and this chapter actually kind of does both. The first direction I thought was that the next chapter was going to take place fully within Guts' mind, within his subconscious. Similarly to the chapter we had where he was in Goto's cave and recounting on all of his past memories, I assumed that we would be inside of Guts' head for the majority of this chapter and that he would be having a conversation with his Beast of Darkness, which doesn't exactly happen. That is sort of the first half of the portion of this chapter, which just leads us into absolute despair. And the second half of this chapter is the other direction that I thought Berserk might go in, and that is shifting focus over to Falconia, seeing Griffith arrive with Casca, and then seeing Casca being able to roam Falconia and seeing what she thinks of what is happening here and how the world has moved on, how the world has been reestablished in Griffith's name, and that this sanctuary now exists. We don't get to see that happen, but we do get to see Casca arrive in Falconia. So the building blocks of the two directions that I thought the story might go in are here, though this chapter didn't really go all the way with either of them. And I kind of would have preferred if it stayed focused on just one story method or one story idea, rather, at the time, than kind of doing both. Because by doing both, I feel like it kind of sets us up for something, but it's something that we've already kind of been set up for. However, the execution of what they did, I did think was very well done, and I want to go into a few thoughts about it overall. My first thing that I want to tackle, of course, is everything happening within Guts' psyche right now, which, if anybody doesn't quite understand, what you're dealing with here is true and honest despair. Now, Guts has been through more trauma than almost anybody in fiction that I can possibly think of, and he's handled it in a multitude of different ways. And I think one of the greatest things about Guts' character is that it does showcase that human side of him at all times, and the fact that he goes in these different directions based upon the trauma that he faces, and that he does tend to, time and time again, rise and overcome it. Not by some miraculous, magical power-up that happens out of nowhere, but by being a person and taking responsibility for the negative things that he's done, and by, showcasing on himself, on his body, by all of his scars and wounds and the white in his hair and the Berserker armor effects, that these things take a toll on you over time, and the longer that it goes, the more of a toll that it's going to take. And I think that this chapter, we see a different side of Guts, but it's one that makes a lot of sense. Because even in this big spread of a page that, yes, does have the horse here, we're recounting pretty much everything that's happened to Guts post-Eclipse, okay? And he has gone through so much since after the Eclipse. Physically, mentally, psychologically, he has gone through so much, and it has mostly been with a singular goal of trying to get Casca safe, which shifted into trying to get Casca healed, which shifted into trying to allow Casca to heal and have a good life in total. But then, of course, that was ripped away once again by Griffith, which kind of pulls everything full circle. And I feel like we can relate that to our own lives in different ways, depending on what your struggle is and what you've been through. If you can ever imagine a time where you feel like you put in so much work and so much effort and you tried so hard and you traveled for as long as you could and you put in all of the work you possibly could and you exhausted yourself, you exhausted your body, you exhausted your mind, and you're trying so hard to accomplish something, and then it just gets ripped out from under your feet. And it's not anything that you did wrong. It's just sometimes these things happen and you feel weak and you feel powerless and you feel enraged and all of these emotions swirl within you. One thing that I like that this chapter did was it showed Shirake, of course, trying to enter within Guts' mind and, bring him back as she normally does. The Berserker armor is not active at this point, but the Beast of Darkness, which is just a part of who Guts is as a person, is definitely active within his mind. And unfortunately, there's no dialogue to go back and forth between them or hearing what the Beast's thoughts are. But I like that as Shirake enters Guts' mind, the moment she sees his thought of Griffith, it's like the teeth of the Beast of Darkness kind of close around Griffith. That desire to just destroy and devour him. And I feel like it's so strong. And you see like some of the chains breaking as well. And if you guys remember, the last time that we saw Guts really talk to the Beast of Darkness, he was saying that he was going to allow Guts to do his thing, but always remember that I am down here and I am ready to release at any possible moment. And I will wait until the right time. I will wait as long as it takes. And it's sort of just that representation that we're always just going to have that little dark part of us. It is part of us as humans. We all have it. And, Guts is insanely powerful because of the amount of trauma that he's gone through in his entire life. And so the Beast is there. The Beast is ready to strike. And it pushes Shirake out of his mind, which I really like that idea because Shirake has always been able to enter Guts' subconscious and always been able to quell him and calm him down and bring him back and bring his ego back. I really like that because of Guts' low state of despair right now, the Beast literally just throws Shirake out of his mind. Like, we're fucking done with this. Like, you cannot enter here anymore. And it just goes to show that there's always a breaking point. The page where Guts is yelling and saying that everything, it was all for nothing, and like that's how it feels, man. And even though they did my boy dirty and threw Guts into the Yamcha dead pose, it still kind of represents that fetal position of just having everything ripped away from you. And instead of having a sword to hold on for comfort, he doesn't even feel like his sword is that comfort anymore. Just as Casca is taken away, that comfort, that sword by his side, I mean, it's a symbolism of both. Like, they're both useless to him right now. Also, after Shirake is pulled out, we see Roderick, who was banging on the door trying to get Guts' attention, but he regrettably has to turn around and walk away. And he's not doing this because he has anything against Guts. It's like he has that responsibility. Like, things aren't going to wait, unfortunately. The island is sinking around them. They have to sail away. Roderick has to be in charge. He has to tell his crew what to do. He has responsibility. People look up to him. And I think he really, really wants to get Guts out of there. He wants to make sure Guts is okay. He wants to make sure Guts is going to be all right and to move forward. But like, it's so sad because he can't. He has these extra responsibilities to do. And so he can't just bang on the door all night. He's got to get his crew out of there. Not just his crew, but all of the sick people, everyone wounded. Like, it all falls on Roderick. I mean, I don't understand. There's still people out there that don't appreciate Roderick, and I don't understand why. I've argued about why he's a Chad so many times, but this is another reason why. And then there is some dialogue about Shirake, who's also feeling defeated, and, just like the island sinking, she's saying that everything submerges. Everything eventually submerges to the ocean floor, including her voice that can no longer reach Guts. And that's where we leave them. Now, this kind of leaves us in a similar spot that we were before, and people were still wondering, is Guts going to use a Baelid, or is, the Berserker armor? I've given my thoughts on this 1,000 times when people have asked, but no, I don't believe Guts is going to use a Baelid. It's possible that the Baelid may activate, but it would be It would go against the story and the themes and the ideas of Berserk 1,000% if he ever used a Bailet. First of all, Guts has firsthand seen everything horrible that has happened at the expense of these apostles and the God Hand and the Bailets, and he would never do that to the people that he cares about. Number two, even if Guts did become an apostle, the power scaling, if you guys remember, Ganishka still couldn't even do anything against the God Hand. They're kind of compelled in the pecking order on the totem pole there, so it's like the power up wouldn't even matter, so he'd be sacrificing people he cares for a power up that wouldn't even help him. Also, to me, Berserk has always been a story about the importance of retaining your humanity and how Guts has gone through arguably worse than so many more people that eventually did choose to use a Bailet and become an apostle, and yet Guts pushes forward and perseveres by himself, within himself. And yeah, he's got damage, but he does what he can for himself and his loved ones as he moves forward. He doesn't sacrifice his loved ones for a better life for himself, for strength or for conquest or for leadership. Like, he just is that guy himself, and he takes those responsibilities on himself. And when he fucks up, he makes sure he pays his dues. He doesn't scapegoat that onto somebody else to suffer and die for his benefit. Instead, he puts himself through the suffering for other people that he loves. However, years and years of dark, twisted, traumatic events have created his own inner darkness and rage, which is the Beast of Darkness. But now, instead of the beast lashing out physically, it seems like it's ripping him apart from within. And we see this broken, depressed Guts that we haven't got before. And yeah, this is a very different Guts than Post-Eclipse. Post-Eclipse was Guts just throwing everything in the wind. I don't give a fuck. I don't care if I live or die. I'm just dedicating my entire life to hunting down these creatures and trying to murder all of them. But this is a Guts that's gone through a hell of a lot more, and just feeling like everything you did was useless. That's a powerfully strong feeling. But then we switch over to Falconia, and we get to see a few characters we haven't seen in a while. We get to see Mule and Sonya, who is, of course, eagerly waiting the arrival of her husbando, even though, he's with Charlotte. And then we get the reveal of Grunbeld and Locust again. And, I've never been, like, the biggest fan of these two, but if you are a fan and you've wanted to see them for a while, they haven't been in the manga for a while, so there they are. And of course, Sonya, being the clairvoyant that she is sensing Griffith's return to the kingdom. And one thing that I thought was really interesting here and might come into play is that this is the first time we've ever seen the harbor in Falconia. So we see Zod flying over, and we get to see the little lighthouse out there and the little ship docking places. And I thought this was really cool and something that we haven't really seen yet. And also, since they're all on Roderick's boat right now, this might be setting up sort of the scenery and scenario of when our group eventually enters Falconia. So just something to think about. And then landing strong like the beast he is, motherfucking Zod makes an appearance in this manga chapter with, of course, the naked Griffith carrying Casca, which, if you guys notice very subtly, there is a close-up of Sonya's eye noticing this return in particular. And we all know that Sonya simps heavy for Griffith. And not only does she have Charlotte to worry about, but now seeing Griffith come home with a new girl in his arms, that's probably not going to rub her the right way. I didn't mean for that to sound as weird as it did. But it also leads us into some questions. Sonya is a clairvoyant, and she does have kind of an ability to see inside somebody's mind. So could it be possible that Sonya sees into Casca's mind and sees something of the eclipse or a history? Would be very interesting if it was Sonya who did the kind of final healing of Casca's mind. That would be really interesting. I also think it would be interesting, and I don't really think this is going to happen, but I think there's like a 15% chance, and I think it would be cool if it did, if somehow Casca and Sonya started to get along very well, and Sonya was sort of eventually kind of turned over to their side, because she's already friends with Shurikei, and if she sees sort of more of the truth of everything that Griffith did, maybe she would be more willing to kind of understand Casca's point of view. I don't know, but just something to think about. But other than that, that was the full chapter, and I really wanted a little bit more out of this chapter, but I think what we did get was pretty interesting, to say the least, and the artwork is looking really, really good. It's looking better and better with each chapter. Now, as far as the next chapter, it does say to be continued, so there might be a chapter next month. I'm not really sure what the date would be, but I would say probably the next chapter is going to continue from here. I would say it might continue from Casca arriving in Falconia, so we might get the actual Casca in Falconia chapter next chapter. And I know they said that the last chapter before this was the end of the Elfhelm, Fantasia segment, but this feels a little bit more like an ending. So maybe beginning with Casca in Falconia is sort of going to begin our next journey of the final arc. But we will see. But other than that, guys, let me know what you thought about this chapter 371 down below. Let me know all your thoughts, theories, ideas, opinions, what you thought about it. Please comment and like it. Also, if you guys would like to, go ahead and subscribe to the channel because I was trying to hit 100,000 subscribers by the end of the year. I really don't think I'm going to hit it at this point, but if you wanted to at least help me try to get there, I'd appreciate it. Other than that, guys, if you want to follow me elsewhere, I have Twitter, Instagram, Discord, all that stuff is linked down below. I also have Patreon and channel memberships if you feel like supporting on that extra level. Beyond that, hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. I'll talk to you next time.